The standoff in Eastern Europe just escalated. Poland just announced it's moving 40,000 troops to its eastern border with Belarus. That's not a drill, not a training exercise. It's a deployment on a scale Europe hasn't witnessed in decades. Officials in Warsaw say it's a direct response to escalating threats from Belarus and from behind the curtain from Moscow itself. This isn't just about troop movements. It's about geography, history, and power colliding in one of the most dangerous flashpoints on the continent. What's unfolding on that border could reshape the security map of Eastern Europe, and the consequences will ripple far beyond Poland. So, let's break down what's happening, why Poland is taking such a drastic step, and how it ties into the larger confrontation between Russia, NATO, and the fragile balance holding Europe together. Poland's defense ministry confirmed the deployment after weeks of reports that Belarus, backed by Russian advisors, was increasing military activity along the frontier. Drones buzzing across the line, migrant flows being engineered by Belarusian border guards, military exercises just a few miles from Polish towns. Warsaw had already reinforced the border with extra patrols, but 40,000 soldiers is something entirely different. That number is closer to a wartime posture. To put it in perspective, it's almost the size of the entire British Army. Polish officials say the move is about deterrence, not invasion, but the scale alone sends a message that they're bracing for more than just harassment. They see Belarus not as a small neighbor acting on its own, but as a proxy for Moscow's wider strategy. Of all the NATO members bordering Belarus, Poland has taken the hardest line, and there are reasons for that. Geography first. Poland sits at the heart of the NATO eastern flank. Its long border with Belarus and Ukraine makes it both a frontline state and a gateway. If Russia wants to pressure NATO, Poland is unavoidable. History is the second reason. Poland has lived through centuries of invasion from the east. The trauma of Soviet domination still runs deep, and political leaders across the spectrum use it as a guide for today's security policy. That's why Poland has consistently pushed NATO to take the Russian threat more seriously, long before the war in Ukraine. And there's politics too. Poland's government wants to show voters it's not just aligned with NATO, but ahead of it. Sending troops now makes a statement, not just to Minsk and Moscow, but also to allies in Washington, Berlin, and Brussels. To understand why Belarus matters, you have to see it as Russia's pressure valve. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began, Moscow has relied on Belarus for staging, training, and intimidation. President Alexander Lukashenko has allowed Russian forces to use Belarusian territory for missile launches and logistics. He's hosted joint drills designed to unsettle Poland and the Baltic states. And now, according to Warsaw, he's greenlighting hybrid tactics like migrant pushes and drone incursions, all to test how far NATO can be stretched. From the Kremlin's perspective, this costs little but gains a lot. Russia ties down NATO resources, destabilizes Poland internally, and keeps the alliance guessing about whether the next move is symbolic or real. Here's where it connects to the larger picture. NATO is already heavily invested in Ukraine's defense. Western states are shipping weapons, training soldiers, and keeping a close eye on Russia's military moves. If Poland gets dragged into a serious border confrontation, NATO suddenly has two crises to juggle at once, Ukraine and Belarus. That's exactly the kind of distraction Russia thrives on. Spread NATO thin, sow division among allies, and shift attention away from the Ukrainian battlefield. At the same time, Poland's move could serve as a warning shot of its own. By massing troops, Warsaw is telling Moscow, "We're ready, and if you test us, you'll get more than you bargained for." It's both a deterrent and a gamble, because once soldiers are mobilized, the margin for miscalculation gets thinner. There's also a domestic angle here that can't be ignored. Poland has poured billions into modernizing its military, buying American Abrams tanks, HIMARS rocket systems, and F-35 fighter jets. The government has promised to build Europe's most powerful land army. Deploying 40,000 troops shows voters that money is being put to use. It reassures them that Warsaw is proactive, not reactive, but it also raises expectations. If this buildup doesn't prevent provocations, or if tensions spiral into something worse, the government will face tough questions at home. And in Poland, national security is never just about the army. It's tied to identity, sovereignty, and the memory of what happens when a country is caught off guard by powerful neighbors. So, what does NATO do now? Officially, the alliance has backed Poland's right to defend its borders, but privately, some European capitals are nervous. Mobilizations of this size can escalate situations rather than calm them down. For the United States, Poland's decision is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it proves that allies are stepping up, not waiting for Washington to carry the load. On the other, it risks pulling the US into a conflict not yet fully defined. If Belarus pushes harder, or if Russia decides to test Poland's resolve, the call for NATO to respond will be immediate. That's the core tension. Deterrence works if it prevents war, but if either side misreads the signals, deterrence can become the spark. From Moscow's perspective, this is useful propaganda. Russian state media is already painting Poland as the aggressor, framing the troop buildup as proof NATO is preparing to invade Belarus. It's the same playbook used before, accusing the West of escalation while Russia quietly moves pieces into place. At the same time, the Kremlin knows that Poland isn't bluffing. Unlike some NATO members, Poland has already shown it's willing to act independently, whether that's sending tanks to Ukraine before the others, or fortifying its border against migrant surges. That independence makes Poland unpredictable, and for Moscow, unpredictability is dangerous. The truth is, nobody knows how this will play out. Poland's 40,000 troops could sit on the border for months, serving as a show of force that prevents escalation. Or a single incident, a drone shot down, a border clash, a misstep in the fog of tension could turn the standoff into something much more serious. The broader question is whether NATO can manage two simultaneous pressure points, Ukraine in the south, Belarus in the north. Because if Moscow sees the alliance stretched too thin, it may be tempted to push harder, betting that the West will eventually blink. So here's where we are. Poland has placed 40,000 troops on the line, signaling it's ready for whatever Belarus, and by extension, Russia might attempt. It's a bold move that underscores both Poland's fear and its confidence. Fear that history could repeat itself on the eastern frontier. Confidence that NATO's strength, combined with its own buildup, can hold the line. But in a region where wars have often started from miscalculation rather than intention, the danger is clear. One wrong move could ignite a crisis that Europe and the world isn't prepared for. And that's why this border, once seen as just a line on the map, is suddenly one of the most dangerous places in Europe.